Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. I hope you guys are waking up and feeling great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your weekend out there so far. We have a ton to talk about in this morning's video. A winter storm will be cranking up here in the coming hours across the plains and then overspread across the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, areas of the Mid-South, the Appalachian Mountains, and then the Mid-Atlantic as we round off this storm. So we're going to cover each individual area in this video. We'll talk about watches and warnings right at the beginning of it, and then we'll dive into the evolution of the storm. We'll even take a look at some short-range model guidance, but we'll really speak on the Euro. But the thing we'll get the most detailed on is individual graphics for certain areas from the National Weather Service. These graphics are forecast from the experts at the National Weather Service. Will show you snow and ice graphics. It'll have towns and cities on these graphics. I think this video will help you folks out a lot as far as really knowing how much snow and ice your specific area is forecast to get. Of course, this isn't exact things. We're not perfect, right? But these are forecast totals expected from the National Weather Service. After we get done getting very detailed on that, we will give you the latest and greatest information as far as winter weather for the South next week. Now, this winter weather potential for the South potentially could be for more areas outside the South. I mean, this could end up becoming a mid-Atlantic threat, a northeast threat, but of course our big focus has been the South for obvious reasons, but we'll talk about everybody. And some things have changed overnight for sure. Confidence has increased for winter weather for the South, but for other areas, it's still a tricky setup. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others have an opportunity to do so too. We'll also talk a little bit about severe weather at the very end of the video too, because we do have an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 for tomorrow. Let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the latest watches and warnings. There has been some changes. So we do have winter weather advisories up here in South Dakota, Nebraska. But once you start to get into the southeastern portions of Nebraska, this is turning into an all-out winter storm. Several inches of snow expected. The thing that has changed, say, in Kansas is that we've had winter storm warnings expanded, can't talk, back west. So now Dodge City, you had a winter weather advisory last night. Now you're under a winter storm warning. So confidence has increased for more winter weather accumulation back west in Kansas. Of course, we still have the winter storm warnings up for Kansas City. The storm will crank up today. Topeka, Manhattan, Wichita, you got it now. Springfield, as we're getting into Missouri, you're just south of these alerts. I mean, one county to your north has a winter storm warning. One county to your east has an ice storm warning. You're probably going to get some sort of alerts that kind of ooze down to Springfield, even Joplin, but up to Columbia, Jefferson City, St. Louis, winter storm warnings. And we do have winter storm warnings up for some southern counties in Iowa. Des Moines, it looks like you'll miss out for the most part to your south. We start to get into Illinois. And I do want to mention all these ice storm warnings in the purple for southeastern Missouri. St. Louis, though, winter storm warnings. Carbondale, down here to the southern sections of Illinois. These southern counties in the purple, these are ice storm warnings. Springfield, winter storm warning. Bloomington, you have winter weather advisory. Still under that winter storm watch, so you could still tweak. You could still get upgraded to that winter storm warning. Effingham, winter storm warning. Just mention a lot of towns here. And then we start to get into Indiana, Indianapolis, winter storm warnings. Just north, winter weather advisory, still hanging on those winter storm watches. Things could tweak. But once you get south of Indianapolis, I mean, it's just going to be an all-out winter storm. Evansville, you have winter storm warnings. You start to get south into western Kentucky, folks. Owensboro, Morganfield, Madisonville. You have ice storm warnings. And then Paducah, technically, you are under a winter weather advisory, but you could get upgraded to an ice storm warning. But I'm telling you, where you have the ice storm warnings, that doesn't mean you're only going to get pure ice. You could get a mixture of winter precipitation, but confidence is the highest that you're going to get ice storm criteria ice, well over a quarter inch. You start to move into Kentucky. You guys, Lexington, up to Cincinnati, back to Louisville. You guys have winter storm warnings. Frankfort, Dayton, winter storm warnings. Columbus, just winter storm watches. So you're right on the fringe of the heaviest winter precipitation. We'll see what happens with that. Nothing north of Columbus, really. Okay, Charleston, you got winter storm watches. These are going to get upgraded to something, whether it's a winter weather advisory or winter storm warning. to something. I will mention you have winter weather advisories all the way down to just north of Nashville, all the way down to the northern Cumberland Plateau, down to Crossville. No winter weather advisories for like Morristown or the Tri-Cities region, but that could change. Winter storm watches for Boone, winter weather advisories for northern North Carolina. And then we start to get into Southwest Virginia. You folks have winter storm watches. I just want to go over all this. Charlottesville winter storm watches, Washington, D.C., the Baltimore area winter storm watches, the entire Delmarva, except the far southern sections. Look at Richmond. You have winter storm watches now. This has trended colder for you guys. Philadelphia, winter storm watches. Pittsburgh, with the southern trends, you're not under anything right now, but that could change. That could change in the coming hour or two. Making this video as of around 7 a.m. Eastern time. All right, so just want to go over that. Let's look at the latest European model that's ran. Literally, hot off the press here. All right, so starting off this morning, not a lot going on right at this very second except some light snow falling in the high plains. But as soon as you start to get to about this afternoon, the green is freezing rain. If you're confused about the time frame, we're getting into this afternoon. For example, this says 4 p.m. It's around 2 or 3 in Central Time. Well, technically 3. But this is getting into this afternoon, the freezing rain breaking out in the pink that you see here. We start to get into this evening. We start to get a wintry mix breaking out across Missouri. And it could start out some ice in Kansas City, very well could, but I think it'll switch back and forth, and I think it eventually will go to all snow. But we start to get into tomorrow morning, and we have an all-out winter storm. Southeastern Kansas could be saved here because of a warm nose with a low pressure moving in. But this is a major winter storm in Kansas, heavy snow in southern sections of Nebraska. As we're getting into tomorrow morning, you got this corridor of ice in central to south central Missouri. Heavy snow begins to move in tomorrow morning into St. Louis. It's an all-out winter storm just ongoing tomorrow morning in Kansas City. This continues. Winter storm begins to move into the southern half of Illinois and Indiana and all across Kentucky, which we'll talk more about here in a second. This is all rain for like Arkansas and even extreme southern sections of Missouri. In fact, we're going to begin some severe weather down here, and we'll talk more on that at the end of the video. But it definitely ends with heavy snow in Kansas tomorrow evening. It's going to be a long duration event, guys. Kind of one of those events that lasts well over 24 hours for certain areas. We're still hanging on to this freezing rain here tomorrow evening, and then we're getting into Monday morning, and it's still snowing in St. Louis, for example. Let's look at Kansas City, for example. Winter weather moves in this afternoon to this evening, lasts all the way till tomorrow afternoon. And then it doesn't finally end. It's almost a 48-hour event. It's about a 24 to 36-hour event for Kansas City, St. Louis. And then it moves on out. Okay? And then we look at, say, the eastern U.S. Here it comes moving in. We go all the way to tomorrow afternoon. Well, let's back it up. This is about tomorrow mid-morning. We got freezing rain, the pink, breaking out across northern areas of Tennessee, the Cumberland Plateau. Look at this wintry mix moving across west central Kentucky. You keep it going, and by the time you're into tomorrow afternoon, you got an all-out winter storm ongoing in Kentucky. The only areas that could be saved from the nastiest icy mix is extreme southwestern Kentucky with the low pressure moving in and with the warm nose aloft and bringing warm air to the surface and aloft. Could switch you just a cold rain, but you get into southern Illinois, Evansville, Indiana. This is a nasty freezing rain. And then we start to get into late tomorrow evening. This is when the heavy snow really starts to take over Indianapolis. I mean, over the Dayton, Cincinnati. It could snow pretty heavily in Louisville for a time before maybe switching to freezing rain and sleet. And you stop it right here. This is the middle of the night tomorrow night. Snow is beginning to enter the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. Heck, even starting out as snow into Richmond. You're getting freezing rain across southwestern VA, southern West Virginia, freezing rain in the favored areas in the western sections of North Carolina. It's turned to all rain for the most part at this point in Tennessee. Big time ice storm ongoing in the pink in Kentucky. The northern half of West Virginia getting all heavy snow. And then you move it to Monday morning. We have an all-out snowstorm moving into the D.C. area, north, south, east, and west. Look at this band of heavy snow. Big time frontogenesis band, meaning right at the beginning of this, I think this could just abruptly start. I mean, you obviously have a wind-up period from light to moderate to heavy snow. But I think you're just going to have just an epic band of snow that moves into D.C., the Baltimore area. And you're going to have what we call warm air advection, which, sounds like a bad thing if you're a snow weather fan, but it's really not. And I'm going to take a look at some soundings here in a second, and I'm going to have to do it on the fly because I forgot to pull them up, and kind of geek out a little bit with that for a second. But your column in the upper levels of the atmosphere in like the D.C. area and northern VA and Maryland, it's going to be super saturated, which means you got enough cold air aloft for it to snow all the way through. But at the surface, it might only be like in the low 30s, upper 20s, so it's not super cold and snowing. But the atmosphere is going to be squeezing out every bit of moisture possible. And this moisture will be falling in the form of snow. So I think you're just going to get this extremely heavy, fat flakes in areas of the mid-Atlantic. And I'm telling you, it is going to be ripping. But southern sections, if it was the weekend, I might drive up to this area just to see it. But anyways, it's snowing heavily in southern Delaware. The Tidewater area getting snow. The Delmarva, southern sections of New Jersey getting a ton of snow. And then look at the back end kind of moisture here. We could end as just some light to moderate snow across Kentucky. I mean, as far south as northern Tennessee. We're getting this, it's still snowing in D.C. If this is correct, it'd be all snow. And snowing in Delaware. How far north does the axis of this snow get in PA? I know I haven't mentioned you guys, but, if this is correct, the southern counties of PA will get a decent amount of snow, maybe several inches, depending on location. And we are definitely cold enough for snow in New York City and the southern New England. It's just how far north does this band of snow get? Now, the interesting thing that keeps showing up on models, and I spent some time on this, is as this is pulling out, and I'm going to go on and zoom in to this area. As this is pulling out, we could get some rain switching to snow late Monday night into northern North Carolina. And say you struggle with mostly rain in southeast VA most of the storm, you could end as a period of light to moderate snow in this area, and it could dump some light snowfall accumulations. You see this? This is Monday night into Tuesday morning. We'll watch out for that. We'll see what this trends with, especially as we get in these short-range models. But, I kind of rounded off with this. This is the latest HER model, the HRRR model, right? Here's an evolution of this, and it doesn't go to the length of the storm. And it pretty much, I would say for the most part, the purple is the sleet on this, freezing rains in that pink, and then the blue is snow. Pretty much follows the Euro. And look at that heavy burst of snow. Somebody's probably going to get dry slotted. We'll see what happens. This is what happens with these storms. Sometimes with these, if you get intense storms down here, it robs moisture to the front end of the storm. So somebody's going to get a dry slot. Who's going to get that? Could it be Central Missouri? Somebody is going to get lack of precipitation. You can see like the dry slot trying to slip into St. Louis, for example. You can see it trying to slip into southern Illinois. So somebody is going to get affected by this dry slot. These storms rob a lot of moisture. And that is a fail mode. That is the fail mode outside of it, if it's ticking north or ticking a little bit further south. This is what I'm talking about with just big-time snows moving into the D.C. area. So as it does, and this only goes out to like 1 o'clock Eastern time in the morning, Monday morning. And I'm going to try to click on this on a sounding in the D.C. area. Except, and it's very cold. I mean, it's 23 degrees, so we're not even worrying about that. But this is what I mean about a column that is super saturated. I click on this sounding. See, the temperature in this sounding graphic is in the temperature is in the red. The dew point is in the green. So if you notice, the dew point is riding right up against the temperature. So 1,000 millibars, that's not very far off the ground. 850, like 800 or 900, that's a few thousand feet off the surface. So, I mean, the dew points are riding up against the temperature. So if your temperature is 23 degrees and your dew point's 22, that means the air is very saturated. And so it's 23 degrees at the surface, 0 degrees Celsius. It's cold in all levels of the atmosphere. It's below freezing. This will be all snow. And because it's so moist way up in the atmosphere is squeezing out every bit of moisture possible. So we call this a saturated column, which means we're going to get a big old what we call frontogenesis band. This is going to be a big front-end thumping of snow for the D.C. Mid-Atlantic area. I mean, even like central to northern VA. This is going to be heavy snow right at the beginning of this, and could last throughout the entirety of the events. So enjoy this. I'm kind of stoked for you guys. Bummed down here, but it is what it is. I live in the armpit of hell, which is South Carolina. But this is going to be a nice event for you guys in the DC area, and it's definitely going to be that snow that I think you can build a snowman with, for sure. So as far as the freezing rain, let's speak on the soundings for that really quick. So some people ask, well, why would we get freezing rain in this setup? Well, I click a sounding kind of out of like Kentucky, right? So this is like Western Kentucky. It's 31 degrees at Celsius, 31 degrees at the surface. So it's cold enough for winter weather at the surface. But you notice how the temperature spikes right here in this area at about 700 and 800 millibars. That's about several thousand feet up in the air above the surface. That's what we call a warm nose of air. And you see this dotted line says 0 degrees Celsius. That's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So the temperature spikes above that. So it's snowing. Then it gets above freezing here. That snow melts. And then it dips below freezing just above the surface. So this could be a sleet or it could be a freezing rain sounding. But it's not going to be a snow sounding because the snowflake melts several thousand feet up in the air. So that's a warm nose of air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. See how it moves this way and then goes back? So hopefully that makes sense. I know I explained that pretty quick. But anyways, as far as snowfall, this is what South Dakota is looking like. Up here, 3 to 4 inches of snow. Lemon, 3 to 6. Rapid City, 1 to 2. Not expecting really any ice here. As far as my friends in Nebraska, big winter storm, especially once you get to the eastern and southeast, well, really the southeastern and southern portion of the state. Just scattered 2 to 5 inch snowfall total, just about most of Nebraska. Then you start to get down here to the Interstate 80 corridor, and then the snow begins to increase. So Omaha, you could get 2 to 7 inches of snow, so that's a pretty wide range. That's spiked a little bit. Lincoln, 4 to 11. Beatrice, I'm probably going to jack up some town names. 8 to 16 inches of snow, 9 to 16 in Hebron, and then Falls City now going for 10 to 18 inches of snow. Nebraska City, 6 to 18. Not expecting much ice up here. I will show a graphic. Let's see if there's any graphic for ice. A little bit of ice in this. Ice definitely to the Interstate 80 corridor. Once you get down to Hebron, or somebody's going to correct me with this, a tenth to a quarter inch of ice. So definitely some ice, especially south of the Interstate 80 corridor with this. A few 1/100ths of an inch of ice. And then you start to get into Kansas. This is when this really turns into a major winter storm. Atchison, 12 to 18 inches of snow. I would say if you live in Topeka, you're probably going to get anywhere from, 8 to 16 inches of snow. Lawrence, 6 to 8 is what they're saying. Emporia, 4 to 6 inches. Wichita, 3 to 4. Greensburg, 4 to 6. Dodge City, probably about the same. Russell, 8 to 12. Norton, 6 to 8. So you combine what you're seeing here. You see all this snow. That's a major winter storm. And then you look at the ice graphic for the same area. If I can find it. Oh, man, that is not good. Emporia, 3 to 4 tenths of an inch of ice mixed with several inches of snow. Not as much when you get into south to northeastern Kansas. This is where the majority of it will fall as snow. But once you get into south of this interstate corridor right here, there's an ice element to this, and this is going to be quite severe. If you live in the red area, this is where you can get a quarter inch of ice or more. And I've said this multiple times since covering the storm. Once you get over a quarter inch of ice or more, that's ice storm criteria ice. It's when you start to get the limbs sagging. You can visibly see it at around a tenth of an inch. The glistening in the trees. And this is when you start to lose power, when you start to get over a quarter inch of ice because of the tree limbs falling on the power lines, etc. So this is a major winter storm for Kansas, no doubt. Iowa, the southern counties of Iowa could get several inches of snow. Lamoni, 6 to 8 inches of snow. Creston, 2 to 3. Charlton, 2 to 3 inches of snow. Burlington, 2 to 3. Davenport, inch or less. Same thing with Des Moines. Atlantic City, 1 to 2. This area could tweak a little bit, especially if we get a northern extension of the snow. But extreme southern counties, all the southern extreme counties of Iowa, several inches of snow off this. Not much ice, except maybe a little bit of ice in the far southwestern corner of Iowa. But you look at Missouri. This is going to be one of your most highly impacted states from this. Missouri, latest information from about 3 a.m. Central Time. St. Louis, 5 to 10 inches of snow. Columbia, the Interstate 70 points north corridor will get the most snow. The most ice will be just south of the Interstate 70 corridor down to the Interstate 44 and just south. So Kansas City going for 7 to 13 in this graphic. St. Joseph 10 to 17. Columbia, Missouri 5 to 11. Jefferson City 4 to 8. A big winter storm for you guys. Big up here, well over a foot is possible in certain areas. Now, you look at this and then you look at the ice. The ice is crippling for Missouri, folks. You get south of Interstate 70 and cross Interstate 44 down to Springfield. From St. Louis to Springfield, you're going to get a bad ice storm from this. So, if you live in the red area here, that's the potential for over 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. And you start to get into southeastern portions of the state, not quite to the Boot Hill, Missouri. I think you'll struggle with a lot. I think you'll happily struggle with mainly rain. But you go down the Interstate 55 corridor down to southeastern Missouri, from St. Louis down to the Boot Hill, you're going to hit a crippling ice storm. This area in purple here, that's the potential for over 3/4 of an inch of ice. I'll say it again, over 1/4 inch of ice will start to cause power outages. Over 1/2 inch will start to cause widespread power outages. Crippling to the trees. It'll start snapping trees. It'll sound like gunshots going off in the woods. Back in the day, South Carolina used to get an ice storm every other year. We don't even get that anymore. But these ice storms are really bad, guys. And you combine that with a little bit of sleet and snow, it's even worse. So crippling ice storm in Missouri. We start to move it into Illinois. Now I'm going to show you a close-up graphic, and then we'll kind of spread it out so we can show everybody. But here's a close-up graphic. Bloomington 2 to 6 inches of snow. Peoria still on the northern edge of the heaviest snow, 1, or you could get 5. Lincoln 4 to 10. Champaign 4 to 9. You get south of these areas, Springfield, anywhere from 1/2 foot to over 1 foot of snow. There's some wide totals. It's going to be a tough forecast because we don't know of how far north the snow is going to expand quite yet. Quincy, 7 to 14. Pittsfield, 8 to 16 inches of snow. We start to get closer to St. Louis down here, 5 to 10. And just taking a more wide look at this, this is going to kind of make it scrawny. But, maybe as much as 2 inches of snow in Chicago. And then Mount Vernon, 3 to 8. And then we start to get down here to Marion, just 1 to 3 inches of snow. The quarter of the heaviest snow is obviously right through the middle to the south central areas of the state. And then we look at the ice forecast. And let's see, the worst of the ice, all-out ice storm in the far southern sections of Illinois. And I know this is kind of small on your screen. Mount Vernon, around 1/4 inch of ice. But once you get down to Marion, this is where we get into our crippling ice storm kind of stuff. Going for over 6/10 of an inch of ice. 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of ice. You see this purple area right here? It's the potential over 3/4 of an inch. It's not good. Not good at all. Head on over to Indiana. Once again, a closer look. Indianapolis going for 5 to 12 in the latest outlook. And keep in mind, like I said, I'm making this video as of this morning. So as of around 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central Time. So they're going to be making tweaks to this all day, but this is as of this morning. But 5 to 12 in Indianapolis, Bloomington 6 to 12. Seems like there's a Bloomington in every single state in the Midwest. But anyways, 1 to 6 in Lafayette, Crawfordsville, 3 to 8. Once you get south of Indianapolis, this is when, like in this color right here, this kind of yellowish orange color, you could start to get over, like 8 to 12 inches of snow, a lot of snow in these areas. And then just taking that broad look, and, Evansville, 2 to 6 inches of snow. And then we look a little bit further north in the northern counties of Indiana, not near as much. Same thing with kind of Illinois. The worst of the snow is going to be in central to south, the south central sections of the state. And once again, there is an ice element to this. Here it is, down here to the south, all-out ice storm south of Indianapolis. You get down to Evansville, going for 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. Madison, same thing. Salem, 1/10 to 1/4 inch of ice. Jasper, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. So an all-out ice storm in the southern sections of Indiana, unless this somehow trends dramatically colder, which that would drop the snowfall totals to the north and bring the heaviest snow to the south. But we're going to need some dramatic shifts for that to happen. And moving into Ohio, once again, a zoomed-in look. Cincinnati, 6 to 8 inches of snow. Dayton, 8 to 12. Columbus, around 4 to 6 right now. Wilmington, 8 to 12. Hamilton, 8 to 12 inches of snow. Georgetown, 6 to 8. Portsmouth, 6 to 8. And just like I said, that more zoomed-in look. This was updated a few hours ago. And then taking that broad look at Ohio right here. And, yeah, you can see where the heaviest snow is for the southern sections of Ohio. You get north, not a whole lot, a few inches at most. So Louisville going for around 6 inches of snow. And once again, we will look at the ice. You know, the ice doesn't look as bad in Ohio, but if you get into the southern sections of the state, you could get over 1/10 of an inch of ice. And then Kentucky, friends here. This was issued around 5 a.m. this morning. Lexington, 4 to 8. Covington, 6 to 13. Goodness. Must be nice. Frankfurt, 5 to 10 inches of snow. Louisville, anywhere from 4, or you could get 9 inches of snow. My friends here in the eastern sections of Kentucky, a few inches of snow. Ashland, 5 to 9. Owensboro, maybe 2 to 6. Elizabethtown, 2 to 5. But it lessens a lot when you get to the southern sections and the southwestern sections of the state. Kentucky is, and I will say Missouri too. Kentucky and Missouri are the two states that I worry the most about ice. This, I'm telling you right now, this could be your worst ice storm in years in Kentucky. Along the Interstate 64 corridor here, there's going to be a corridor of a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch ice totals. I mean, it is going to be bad. The northern sections, the reason it cuts off is because you'll see more snow. The southern sections, you could be saved by warm air, but even the southern sections of Kentucky, 1/10 to as much as a 1/4 inch of ice. But like Lexington, I mean, for example, going for several inches of snow and also a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of ice. That is a crippling winter storm. The thing that I haven't really talked about much with all this too is the cold air to follow behind this. So it's not like you're going to have some dramatic warm up after this storm. Everything's going to freeze up after this storm. Paducah, you barely can see it, but that's around 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of ice. Hopkinsville, about 1/4 inch. It's a serious deal, guys. When I head on down to Tennessee, Nashville could get a couple 1/100ths of an inch of ice. I think the Cumberland Plateau and the northern counties of Tennessee could see around 1/10 of an inch of ice depending on your location. Not expecting a huge deal from this, but yeah, I will kind of zoom into eastern Tennessee. The northern Cumberland Plateau, someone could get maybe 2/10 of an inch of ice. Not expecting much as of now for eastern Tennessee. But, I could definitely see a quick inch or so of snow. Not going to say you heard it here first, but if you live in the far northeastern sections of Tennessee, I think you could get a burst of snow right at the beginning of this, and it could surprise people. So I guess you heard it here first. We'll see what happens. We continue. A lot of information, guys. And you know how I am. I like to get detailed. But West Virginia, Charleston now going for around 6 inches of snow. Parkersburg, 7. Morgantown, 7. Flatwoods, 8. Elkins, 7. Beckley to Logan to Lewisburg, around 2 to 3 inches of snow. And, a big hitter for especially, sections of West Virginia that typically kind of misses out. Like Charleston misses out a lot. We'll see what happens with this. And, you look at the icing situation also in West Virginia, and it definitely looks concerning. If you get 6 inches of snow mixed with 1/10 inch of ice in Charleston, that's going to pack a punch. Huntington, 1/4 inch of ice is what they're going for. Lewisburg, over 3/10 of an inch of ice. Beckley, over 2/10. So definitely a good bit of ice in these areas. And then you look at PA. The general theme in PA is if you live in the southern sections of the state, you're going to get a lot of snow. But there's still a fail mode, and they are going extreme with the range here. Like Harrisburg, you could get 1 inch, they're saying, or you could get 7 inches of snow. Oof, that is a wide, weird range. Pittsburgh, 2 to 7. Uniontown, 5 to 10. Cumberland, this is getting down into like southern sections, but 5 to 9. Gettysburg, 3 to 8. Lancaster 1 to 7. Philadelphia 1 to 6 inches of snow. I would aim towards the higher amount in this area. But once you get into the northern sections, not as much, but who knows? This could surprise. And as far as ice in these areas, not expecting much ice. Not expecting much ice at all. But New Jersey, they got an updated graphic. Check it out. New York City, not going for a whole lot. I know you're not New Jersey, but you get what I'm saying. But probably around an inch or so in New Jersey. Trenton, 2 to 3. Mount Holly, 3 to 4. Camden, 4 inches. Salem going for 5 to 6 inches of snow. Atlantic City, 5 to 6 inches of snow. You get all the way down to the southern sections of the state, maybe just 5 to 6 inches of snow in this kind of yellowish shade. So this is going to be a nice snowstorm for you southern sections of New Jersey. Not expecting really any ice from this up here. But this is a big area right here that a lot of people are paying attention to because you guys have really been ripped off as far as winter storms lately. But this is the mid-Atlantic, Baltimore to D.C., 6 to 8 inches of snow. Annapolis going for 8 to 12 now, folks. Hagerstown, 6 to 8. Warrenton, this has really increased for the northern sections of Virginia. I mean, if you live in this area, and say in like the lighter shade of yellow, 6 to 8 inches of snow. Harrisburg, 4 to 6. Charlottesville going for 4 to 6 inches of snow now. Fredericksburg, 6 to 8 inches of snow is what's forecast. Man, this is uptrended for you guys. Good for you. Lexington Park, 4 to 6. What about ice in this forecast? Yes, I mean, for example, they're going for 4 to 6 inches of snow in Charlottesville with anywhere from a tenth to a quarter inch of ice. Not expecting really any ice from D.C. to extreme northern VA to Maryland up to Baltimore, but definitely you're mixing several inches of snow with a solid glaze of ice down here to the south. And then look at Southwest VA. This is going to mainly be an icing event. Roanoke, the Blacksburg, quarter inch of ice. Lynchburg, closer to 0.2 of an inch of ice. Danville, maybe a few 100ths of an inch. Mount Airy, a tenth to 0.2 of an inch of ice. This will be more of an icing event in this area. We're going to get some sleet, but I do think you could get a thumping of snow right at the beginning. I do. So even though they're not calling for any snow in this area, you heard it from Mitch, you could get a thumping of snow right here at the beginning of this storm, and then it'll eventually switch to sleet and freezing rain. We'll see what happens. And then a graphic I haven't showed you guys much is Southeast VA. Check this out. Richmond going for 3 inches of snow now. Salisbury, 6 inches. Cambridge up to 8. And Accomack, Southern Maryland, I believe, 3 or 4 inches of snow. Norfolk now going for a couple tenths of an inch of snow. I'd watch this area for the back end of this storm that I just broke down. Petersburg, 1, 2 inches of snow. Louisa, I think, around 6 inches of snow. Not going to try to pronounce that one, but 5 inches of snow. So, man, it's definitely trended better for a lot of people. Now let's switch guns and let's speak about the threat of winter weather for the South next week. So this is going to excite people and this is going to bum people out. And you're going to feel my emotions probably in this video more than ever, especially when we flip to the Southeast frame. But just bear with me because we're going to still have a lot of changes with this. Let's start off in the South Central U.S. We'll compare the GFS with the Euro. So we'll start this off. If you're wondering about time frame, here it is, January 8th, 7 a.m. So we're up. We're getting into next Wednesday. So Wednesday, January the 8th. We got snow diving down into New Mexico. We got some snow breaking out across central Texas. And then we get it into Thursday morning, January the 9th. We got a freezing rain, some type of frozen precipitation breaking out across central Texas. Not a big deal, huh? Then bang, winter storm breaks out late Thursday night next week. And we all of a sudden got a winter storm breaking out across central to northern sections of Texas. And this turns into a huge snowstorm, winter storm for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, points southwest to the Texarkana area, to southeastern Oklahoma. Big winter storm moves into Arkansas. Based off this run of the GFS, not a forecast, guys. Sheesh, not a forecast. Get snow all the way into northern Louisiana. Now this is getting into the 10th. Just a huge snowstorm based off this track for like the Dallas-Fort Worth area. All rain on this run for like southeastern Texas and southern Texas. But this would keep this corridor of snow. This would turn a huge snowstorm for, say, Memphis, winter storm for northern Mississippi, getting into Tennessee, which we'll talk more about here in a second, and then it heads on out. So latest GFS just goes crazy with a winter storm. I'll go on and say it. For the areas that have just gotten a lot of winter weather the last few winters already, you guys have just, I don't know. The weather just favors you guys lately. Not sure what's going on with that. But we'll move into the Euro, latest European model, the 06Z run. And remember, this only goes 144 hours out. But this is heading right towards the same scenario, except it's a little bit more amped. So it's raining in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for example, in this run, in most of central and southern and southeastern Texas and all Louisiana and southern Arkansas. But you can see cold air crashing down with this. So we're getting a winter storm north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, back into this area, getting the southern Oklahoma, moving into northern Arkansas. But you have to switch it to the OOZ because this only goes out 144 hours out. And if you continue to run, it gets very close to... And normally, yeah, I mean, it switches it from rain to a winter weather event from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the latest Euro is definitely more north, more warm. So you're not getting snow into like northern Louisiana, but we're taking in a Friday morning. This brings a snowstorm for a good chunk of Arkansas, but it's just further north. Memphis, here comes a winter storm. And I'm already hearing that some of the local national weather services across the western deep south, the southern plains, are already starting to mention winter weather. So you know their confidence is beginning to increase. And then behind it, it moves on out. So two of the major models are now starting to lock into kind of a similar scenario. We've been talking about this for days, okay? What about the Euro Ensemble? Does it support this? Absolutely. This is in 3-day increments. So what you're going to see is the snow from the system we just broke down that disappears. And then here comes the 3-day, 72-hour snow ensemble. And it'll move in, and you can see where the signal spikes on the Euro Ensemble. For Texas, for southern Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas, that's a pretty hefty snowfall signal. I mean, you got a 2 to 3 inch snowfall, meaning in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then it kind of drops off once you get into Arkansas. But, I mean, that's still a solid signal in Arkansas, northern Mississippi, western areas of Tennessee. And, I mean, that's a solid signal for a winter storm for the South, just like I've been talking about for the South. Okay, and yes, I am going to protect myself a little bit because some of the comments have been a little bit spicy. Texas is the South to me. That's the South. Louisiana is the South to me. Some people would argue what Arkansas is, but it's pretty far south. This hasn't happened yet either, I would say. So you move there, and it's over. What about the latest GFS ensemble run? It's not as loud, but I mean, it's pretty obvious. It has the same footprint as the Euro ensemble. Shows a solid signal for snow for Texas, but it's not as loud. It's not as aggressive at all, but I mean, it shows the kind of the same footprint in general. Okay, let's just stop it at that. Now let's take a look at the Southeast. So this is where I live, obviously. I've said it many times. I live here in central South Carolina. I'm a big winter weather fan, so I've been pulling hard for this internally. I've tried not to throw it into my videos on my emotional take on this. I think a lot of people have even been praying for snow for me, and I really appreciate y'all. But putting that all aside for a second, let's show you what the models look like here. So we're getting into GFS here. This is the latest run. We're getting into Thursday evening, and here it comes. Winter storm. Looks like a decent track. It's all rain, though, for the southern half of Louisiana, Mississippi, and even in Alabama. And then all of a sudden, you get a major winter storm for northern Alabama. And the pink is freezing rain. This is not a forecast. You know, the orange is sleet. Just trying to sniff out the time frame, the signal at this point. You get a winter storm breaking out across the entire state of Tennessee. Snow's even getting all the way up into the Ohio Valley in the Midwest. And we keep this going, and we go all the way to the middle of the night next Friday night. And it's all rain for most of Atlanta to Columbia, heck, even struggling in Charlotte. Wintry mix in the Greenville-Spartanburg area up into Tennessee, western North Carolina. It is starting is definitely a winter weather event. It's definitely starting off with snow. But that low pressure I can already see is in southwest Georgia. It's not favorable. Not favorable for snow further south, like along the I-20 corridor, which is what we're really looking for a lot of my folks that are tuning in from really deep down in the south. But this is a big event for a lot of people. All rain for Atlanta to Columbia, to southeast North Carolina, even Birmingham. But you hang on to a lot of winter weather in North Carolina. kind of that notorious I-85 corridor. This turns into a major winter storm for the Mid-Atlantic. And then I would say most of the Southeast, most of the Carolinas, besides northern North Carolina, gets kind of ripped off in this storm. Now, I would say northern sections like north of Charlotte, heck, even north of Raleigh, it stays winter weather the entire time. But it's just the latest GFS is just one of your classic things that we've seen the last few winters. I mean, since I would say dating back to the awful February 2021 event that shut down the power grid in Texas, for example. Since then, besides a favorable few week period in January of 2022, for whatever reason, the weather has just favored this. Whatever it may be, we have just continued to have a track that looks like this. Now, I'm going to explain there's some differences with this that could make it go back the other way. And I'm going to explain what could make it continue that way. But that is the latest GFS. And I can tell, I can hear it. We got people south of what I just showed you bummed out. And trust me, I get bummed out too. It stinks. But we got to continue to try to figure it out and sniff this one out. So the latest Euro from this morning, you can tell it's going to be amped. Okay, it's raining for all Louisiana. Where does this continue to go? I think the pattern supports this not to cut. So I don't think we're going to continue to get some low pressure that just rides all the way up here. I just don't think the pattern supports it. But the latest Euro overnight does the same thing. Big winter storm for Tennessee, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama. So you guys would get a nice winter storm out of this. Even starts it off as a winter storm for northern Georgia. And for whatever reason, this system gets very sheared out as we get into Friday night and Saturday morning, meaning it loses its heavy precipitation. It does bring northern North Carolina winter weather, and it would probably bring more winter weather if there was just more moisture. But for whatever reason, it really shears it out. But, for example, like Chattanooga, an area that does not get a lot, and northern Georgia, it stays mainly winter weather for this. So it'll be interesting. It's not, I would say this, to wrap that up, it's not that far off from something bigger like to the I-20 corridor. It's not. You need a better cold air press. And I'm going to talk about where we can get that here in a second. But the latest Euro ensemble, this is the most discouraging thing out of this, is the Euro ensemble and the GFS ensemble, which is one of the most reliable things you need to look at outside of the operational runs. Here comes the Euro ensemble. It's a pretty clear signal. It completely supports its operational run. It really keeps the axis of winter weather up here in the Mid-South, Dallas, Fort Worth, the Little Rock. And if you live in those areas, don't get mad at me for being bummed out. I'm pulling for you guys. I am. It just would be nice if other areas to the South could get into it too. That's why, I got people that hit me up on social media to be like, man, we don't ever get snow in Arkansas or Tennessee or Mississippi. And I just want to so bad comment and say, dude, you've gotten a winter storm like the last 3 or 4 winters. Like some of these winters, you've gotten multiple ones. But I don't. I'm just like, hey, short-term memory. I get it. But, at the same time, some of these areas further to the north just average more snow. So your expectations are a little bit higher, right? So I get it. But it's pretty obvious the footprint is from the western deep south to the mid-south and then to the mid-Atlantic and the upper sections of the southeast. It's a pretty solid signal for like northern Georgia, an area that's really missed out lately. So that would be a cool area to see get hit. It's like northern Georgia. It really would be. But, once you get to the I-20 corridor, the signal drops off significantly, guys. It really does. But I'm telling you, we don't know if this is going to be an overrunning event, northern stream dominated event, southern stream dominated event. There are still widespread signals with this. And it's the same thing with the GFS ensemble, guys. I mean, it's a little bit more broad, I would say. You have, a signal for the south, but this is really, you see this kind of 2 to 3 to 4/10 of an inch of snow down here. This is really driven off 1 or 2 members out of the 30 members. So it's skewing the mean down here. And it's just a wonky looking signal even up here across the Mid-South. It looks kind of weird. It's not very loud. So, yeah. Now, let's explain the setup. And I'm going to have to jump off here and I'm going to have to pull my, you see my beautiful back screen here. I'm going to have to pull my little writing utensil up here. Don't want to update it. And I'm going to draw on this. So what's going on here? So this is our energy we're watching that could create a winter storm across the areas of the South and Mid-South. Okay, this is our energy right here. Okay, many people are calling it an upper low, a Baja low, whatever you want to call it. That is our energy. We got this ridge spike in here. This energy kind of slides down here and gets jammed up in the southwest. So at the same time, we have this trough digging right here. This is kind of providing an injection of cold air across the eastern U.S. But you notice there's a spike in the ridge right here. There's a spike in the ridge, in my opinion, because this area of energy, okay, is diving so far to the southwest, it's actually buckling the jet to the north. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but most of the time it is. But if we can kick this area of energy out faster, then it can get involved with the cold air being pumped out by this trough right here. You need this to speed up for something bigger for everybody, including the Carolinas and Georgia. But instead, it hangs back here too long. It's like it's taking a vacation back here in Baja California, and it ejects too late, and then our really cold air supply, at least for the southeast, is messed up because this thing is kind of heading on out. This thing is leaving, and this thing is finally arriving, but our cold air supply is kind of leaving, and you can already see a little bit of a spike in the ridge. Now, the wild card in this is you see this blue starting to show up here. This could be a fresh injection of cold air, but can it get down here fast enough to provide that injection of cold air for our system? Okay, it's got to get down here fast enough. All right, and you keep this going, and it really doesn't. It looks like it does, but it doesn't. On the latest Euro, it does. For example, you stop it right here. You got to think that all the moisture isn't right here. Okay, all the moisture is right here. It's kind of surging up into this area. Okay, so here comes your injection of cold air. On the latest Euro, it just really gets sheared out, and the entire system kind of detaches from all your main moisture down here, and we just get some sort of leftovers right here. There's a nice little shot of cold air, and we got this other piece of energy diving right here, but in general, there's just, what I'm trying to say is there's just no true connection. But if we can get that little northern stream energy to drop down, you can see there's our really big cold air supply in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Okay? And here comes an injection of cold air from some sort of piece of the polar vortex dropping down. But does it drop down in time to match up with the moisture to the south? You can see that. See this little drop down right here? We need this to move down faster. There's all kinds of energy in the atmosphere, guys, and we just need the dots to connect. And at the end of the day, man, you really need that energy to bust loose faster across the east to match up with the cold air that will be in place. If it shoots too slow to the east, then you're just not timing it right. And for whatever reason in the southern plains as of late, you don't need perfect timing, or you've been getting all the perfect time. For the southeast, it's like, it's like an act of Congress to get all the pieces to come together. I have no idea why the atmosphere, I know it sounds crazy, but it's favoring the southern plains and the western deep south, basically Dallas, Fort Worth, the Little Rock, Shreveport, Jackson, Memphis, the Nashville, Huntsville. I don't know why those areas are getting hit so much as of late, but it's pretty obvious that there is just something. And I will say this, there is the potential that the MJO is affecting this. It's kind of dipping into a null phase. Maybe that has something to do with it. But it's all learning. We're all learning here. But, I can tell you that there is a severe weather threat tomorrow for the Deep South. We have an enhanced risk now for Jackson, the Greenwood. Same areas that just always gets hit hard. Monroe. Level 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather. The green is a slight risk. Level 2 out of 5. The dark green, marginal. And the tornado risk, pretty large, but it's not very high. But there is a risk. This could increase to 5% risk of a tornado in the brown area within 25 miles in any given location. And then really it's the winds that are a big deal tomorrow. A squall line is going to move through this area. If you live in this red area here, it's a 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. So the severe weather as far as winds is going to be a big deal tomorrow. So please take this serious. And the evolution of this pretty much goes like this. I mean, you start to get into tomorrow afternoon. Line of storms develops in eastern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, sweeps across the Mississippi Delta. This is getting into 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock tomorrow, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. This line of storms gets all the way to Birmingham, Huntsville. I mean, crosses across Tennessee. But it'll be the most intense through this enhanced risk area. And we're going to have little spin-ups in this line too. So definitely a nasty line of storms. Folks, that's all I got. I hope to bring you better news this evening for the Southeast. I know that's a bummer. It's not over. And I will continue to say, and I said this in last night's video, that the pattern MJO-wise, Climate Prediction Center, National Weather Service-wise for the rest of January looks pretty favorable. But I don't know what it's going to take to break loose this just weird pattern that really just avoids the Southeast. I can sit here and just, throw all my emotions into it if I want to and say that, the weather needs to find some creativity and all of this and other. But at the same time, I think it's just bad luck, bad timing, really bad timing. I mean, it's just the atmosphere. It doesn't really care what we think. It's just going to do what it does, right? But hopefully we can get some better trends. I'm trying to reel one in for us for here in the Carolinas and Georgia. So we'll see what we'll continue to do. That's all I got. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.